it's definitely important to keep a list of all your expenses as you pay them out so you don't overdraft your account. Now, when overdraft is if you have $100 in your bank account and you go and spend $120, the bank will actually pay that $120, and then they'll charge you $30 to pay that extra $20. So then you owe the bank the $20 you didn't have in the first place and the $30 fee that they charged you for paying that bill and not just rejecting it. So it's very important to keep that running total so you don't get those $30 charges because they add up fast. One thing to note, if you get a big check, let's say your normal paychecks are $500 and you deposit them, no big deal. Well, then your grandmother says, congratulations for graduating, here's a $5,000 check. And you go to the bank and you're like, yes, I have money. Well, you give them that check and they're like, that's way more than normal. And they'll put a hold on that check and say, okay, $200 will be available now. Another $1,000 will be available in 3 days, and the full amount will be available in 7 days. So that's one of those things that people don't really tell you because there's not a lot of people that get big fat checks that they deposit. So just be aware of that kind of thing. If you get a big check and you deposit it, it might take a little while for it to be available for you. Now, a savings account, it's very important. It's the best way I can say is this is your lifeline to emergencies. You want to start out trying to get at least $1,000 in savings once you get out on your own, just as a safety net. I don't know how many of you guys drive, but if your tire goes out and you have to buy a new tire, sometimes those are up to $250 a piece. So $1,000 is not a lot of money, but it's enough to get you through those little emergencies. The goal that a lot of adults strive for is to get 3 months of your payment, basically monthly payments in your savings. So if something happens and you get laid off, you're still good for 3 months. Another advantage of a savings account is you do earn interest. So, it might not be a lot, but, an extra $4 or $5 every month for just having your money sitting in it is great. And then, sorry, going a little fast there. Next thing to talk about is credit. I know credit's kind of a crazy thing to think about when you're young. I know when I hit 18, I wanted to go out and get a credit card and feel like a grown-up, and there's different types of credit, and credit is a very strange thing. There's different ways that credit interacts. So I have two little charts on here. If you see the one on the left, it tells you the range of your credit score. As you can see, 330 is really low on the score, and 830 is the highest you can go. So it kind of has a gradual red to green to show you where you are. Now, when you're first starting out, you're going to have a low credit score because you don't have very much credit. The way that you get higher and higher credit is based on the second chart. So 35% of your credit score is based on your payment history. So if you have a credit card, do you make your payments on time? That makes up 35% of your credit score. Credit mix here, the 10%, that is, if you have a credit card, like a Visa card, that's one type of credit. A car loan is another type of credit. And then like a Chevron card is another type of credit. So that's where the 10% credit mix comes from. They like to see you diversified in the types of credit that you have. 10% is made up of new credit. One of the flags they have is if you start going out and getting a whole bunch of new credit cards all at once, that'll make your score go down a little bit. Because if you're only making $1,000 a month and you have $25,000 worth of credit cards, realistically, if you charge all those credit cards up to the max, how are you going to pay all of those? So the lower your amount owed on those credit cards, the higher your score will be, which is where that other 30% of amount owed comes from. I believe they like to see less than 3% or 30% balances. So if you have $1,000 credit card, they like to see your balances under $300. And then of course, the last one for 15% of your credit score is made up from credit history. So the longer you have credit, the higher your score is going to go. So when you're younger, it's going to start out lower because you just don't have that length of history. So the older you get, the longer you have that credit, the better your score will be. Now, here's an example of how credit cards work. One thing to be aware of is how you pay your monthly payments, because you're going to get charged interest. Because credit card is basically a bank saying, I'm going to give you money when you don't really have the money. So I'm going to charge you a fee to borrow that money from me. So in this case, we're going to say John and Jane both have $2,000 in debt on their credit cards, and it requires a 3% payment or $10 a month. And they're both strapped for cash, but Jane actually puts an extra $10 on top of her minimum payments, and John only pays the minimum. So John is paying $10 a month to pay down his $2,000 debt, and Jane is paying $20 a month to pay down her $2,000 debt. So they both have a 20% annual interest, which is really kind of high. And down below, you can see the calculation of how that 20% is calculated. So as you can see, that 3% that we were talking about that you have to pay on the balance, 3% of $2,000 is $60. So your minimum payment's going to be $60. And then the way they figure out the interest is they take your balance times 20% times 12 months, and then that's $33. So when you're paying $60, you're really only paying $26.67 off of that $2,000. The rest of that money is going towards interest. So it kind of sucks when you're paying $60, but only seeing your balance go down by $26. So the next slide is going to show you the breakdown of how much interest each of them paid. So in the end, it takes John 15 years to pay off that $2,000. And in that, he ends up paying $2,241 in interest. So he's paying more in interest than the actual money he borrowed. And then Jane, because she paid that extra $10 a month, she only ends up paying $3,276. So her interest is only $1,276 over that $2,000. So that extra $10 a month actually helps her not only save 8 years worth of payments, but over $1,000 in interest. So it's kind of an interesting way to take on how interest is. That extra $10 just goes towards paying down the principal balance. And here's where I need your guys' feedback. This is a scenario, and I want you guys to tell me who you think is going to make more money upon retirement. So we have Carlos, who invested young. He decided, I'm going to invest $2,000 a month every year with an average annual rate of return at 12%. And he's going to do that for 8 years, and that's it. He's not going to pay anything else for the rest of his life towards retirement. So he's only putting in $16,000. Now, Emily, she's investing $76,000 because instead of only investing from 19 to 26, she's investing $2,000 a month from 27 all the way up to 65. So she's doing 38 years worth of payments at the same, where her annual rate of return is at 12% average. So you guys tell me, who do you think is going to have more money when they retire? Anybody? I can't see the chat, so can you unmute and tell me?
Xavier's saying he thinks it's Emily.
Okay. Anybody
Thumbs
else?
up. Thumbs up if you think it's Emily. You guys can talk. Okay.
Okay.
Thumbs up if you think it's Carlos. Nobody thinks it's Carlos?
Okay. Well, here is the answer. So if you look at the first 10 years, you see Carlos here is investing $2,000 every year from age 19 to 26. And then Emily is going from age 27 all the way over here to age 65. Now, the way compound interest works is we're doing the 12% example. So 12% times 2,000 is $240. So you add that $240 to the $2,000. Now, the next year, you're adding another $2,000 to that balance. So you got $4,240 times 12%. And so that's where you get the 4,749. So each year you're taking the new balance and multiplying or adding 12%. So at the end of the year, Carlos here has $2,288,997, whereas Emily just has $1,532 and some $183. So as you can see, even though Carlos only did $16,000 total, because he did it when he was young, that compound interest each year gave him $700,000 more at retirement than Emily. So how many of you think it's a good idea to invest early after seeing this? I wish I had known this because I'd rather do that and have this number here. So that's just a kind of a little crash course on compound interest and why it is good to invest early.
The other reason is when you're hitting 27, that's when you start like, ooh, I need to buy a house, or ooh, I'm having a baby or something. Yeah. And you have less money to save for retirement. So if you do it young, then you will, you might have more money because you're not spending on other things like little people who want everything from you.
Well, and if you think about it, this is $2,000 for a whole year. So if you divide that by 12 months, it's really not a lot of money per month. It might seem like a lot, but it's not. But comparatively, $16,000 for Carlos, $76,000 for Emily, and he's got over $700,000 more. It's definitely good to invest young. And now the second type of investment that I want to talk about is life insurance. Now there's two main types of life insurance. One is called term life, and it is a lower rate, but it's only good for a certain number of years. So generally a term life, I think common is a 20-year policy. So you could get it at age 20, but it would expire at age 40. So you'd have to get a new term life policy at 40 to replace the one that you lose once the term is up. And you need to be careful because if you have health concerns, like my husband was just diagnosed as diabetic, he didn't know that when he was 20 and he's 45 now. So if he tried to get a life insurance policy now, he might not get approved because of those health concerns. So that's another good thing about getting life insurance when you're young is you're usually healthier. Now, a variable universal life policy, that you want to get it early. It's not quite as low of a rate as a term life policy when you first start out, but it locks that rate in for your whole entire life. And part of your premiums are invested. So that will add to the death benefit when you die, that the gains on your investments will be added to the base value. And I'll kind of go over that in the next slide. And one other thing about variable universal life policies is if you come upon hard times, like let's say you lose your job and you're like, how am I going to come up with this money to pay my life insurance? Rather than canceling your policy and having to re-qualify and get a whole new policy at a higher rate because you're older, you can actually use those earnings from the investments to pay your premiums until you get into a better shape. to be able to pay your premiums again. So that's another thing. Term life is just a flat face value. Variable life is a face value plus your earnings. Now, my husband is a financial planner and he actually sells life insurance. So I had him go on and do a quote for somebody for $150,000 face value policy at 20 years, at 40 years, and at 60 years for a 20-year term life policy, and then a 20-year-old variable universal life policy. So how much, or how many of you think that the premiums for age 20 to age 80 would be more if you had a term life insurance? And how much do you think it would be more if you had the variable life? Okay, so let me show you. So your term life at age 20, if you're a non-smoker, it's $30 a month for 20 years for $150,000 face value, meaning if you die anytime within that 20 years, your beneficiaries get $150,000, period, that's it. Now in that 20 years, you're gonna pay $7,200. Then at age 40, if you can qualify to get another 20-year term life policy, the price jumps up $10. So now you're at $40 a month for 20 years, which is $9,600. And again, it's $150,000 period. If you die, your beneficiaries get that amount and no more. At age 60, if you look, this is a huge jump in premium because at age 60, most people have a lot of health problems. And if you can, and you know, you're older, so you're more likely to die sooner, I guess is the best way to put it. And so at age 60, if you wanted to get a 20-year term, it would be $200 a month. So if you were to have that from age 60 to age 80, that'd be $48,000 you're paying so that your beneficiary would get $150,000. So over those 60 years from age 20 to age 80, you're paying $64,000, $64,800. And again, upon death, if at age 80, your beneficiary only gets $150,000. Now, the variable life insurance policy, as you can see, to start out with at age 20, it's $46. So it's double the cost of the 20-year term life. But that $46 is locked in for life. So 60 years worth of premiums is only $33,000 compared to this $64,000. So it's over less than half of the cost. But because those premiums are invested over 60 years, you're going to end up, your beneficiary is going to end up getting $641,311. So you get your $150,000 you're paying for, plus almost $500,000 in earnings. So my advice is, as soon as you can, get a variable universal life policy and just keep going. It will pay off big time.
Hey, Demry, a lot of jobs offer life insurance. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, for example, the state offers a group term life policy. So, for example, I have one through my employer and I pay for a group term life, and it's based on your age, and it the rates change every year as you get older. And it's still good to have. So I wouldn't say no, don't. I mean, personally, I have both insurance through my work and I have another one outside of work. So most places do offer term life insurance, and by all means, if they have that, definitely I would sign up for it, because most of employer health insurance does not make you go through a health screening during your first 30 days or whatever that you join a company, but it's never guaranteed. So I personally would do it and then also have a universal life policy on the side. but that's up to you. I just recommend, just financially, it makes way more sense for a variable universal life, especially if you have history of, like in my family, I have a history of diabetes. I have a history of cancer in my family on both sides. So it's definitely a plus to get one that's a rate locked in. But yeah, definitely don't not sign up for a policy through your work. Now, the part that you all been waiting for, learning how to budget.
Real fast, Demry, we had a question. Jamie asked, is life insurance required? Do you need life insurance?
You do not need life insurance. It's not required. But I believe the last time I looked, a cheap casket to be buried in was around $10,000. So if you die and you don't have life insurance, then your beneficiaries, like your kids or your parents, will then have to come up with $10,000 to bury you. And then if you have debts that you have to pay, they're going to have to pay those, and they won't have any money to pay that. So life insurance is something a lot of people don't like to think about because they don't like to think about what's going to happen when I die.
Yeah, I will add to that, Demry, that like if my husband dies, oy vey, all that debt becomes due, and I got to figure out the mortgage, and I'll probably have to get a new mortgage, and
you lose his income
and everything, and I lose his income, and I got to take care of my 2 kids and everything. But when my Nana died, she had over $100,000 in credit card debt. And they were calling us saying, hey, you need to pay your grandma's credit card debt. My mom's like, no, I don't. She's dead. My mom's dead. And I'm just going to be sad about that. And you guys get nothing. And so you're not responsible for your non-spouse's debts. But I'm definitely responsible for my husband's debts, if that makes sense to you guys. So if he had a bunch of credit card debt that I didn't know about and he dies, I'm like, no, I can't even kill him myself. Well, that's kind of a benefit for it.
Another thing to think about is, like, for example, if my husband dies, then we lose his income, but his life insurance will pay off our house, which will free up, a $1,500 a month house payment. So yes, we're losing his income, but since we have that life insurance to pay off the house, our amount that we have to pay off each month, or to pay each month, has reduced. So that's one of the benefits of life insurance. Is it's not necessarily income replacement, but it does definitely help. So the last thing to talk about today is learning how to budget. And one of the things I learned when I went shopping for my very first apartment was that landlords want your rent to be around 30% of what you make. So if that place you want, their rent is $800 a month, they're going to want to see you making about $2,400 a month in order to approve you as a renter by yourself. And now that's one reason a lot of people do get roommates, just to show that they have enough income when they first start out. If you're working a part-time job and aren't able to make $2,400 a month, a lot of people will get 1 or even 2 roommates. But just be aware that that's around where your landlords are going to want your income to be based on their rent. 10% savings is definitely a good go-to. You want to get that savings up to $1,000 as fast as you can. And then just keep putting it in there till you got that 3 months of payments in there. And then if you keep going, great. Again, 10% towards retirement. If you do 10% of your income, if you're $2,400 a month, 10% of that is what? Who can tell me? Anybody?
Savior, do the math. Do the math, Savior.
I can't see the chat, so I can't tell if anyone's.
Xavier asked what the question was again.
Okay, so if you're making $2,400 a month and you're supposed to put 10% away towards retirement, how much are you putting towards retirement?
$240.
All right. Now, do you remember, now what is 240 times 12 months? Anybody?
It is $2,680.
Bingo. Now, how much did Carlos save in our example? It was only $2,000 a month, and he had over $2 million. So, right there, start by saving 10%, and you're right on track. Now, if you add that 30%, your 10% savings, your 10% retirement, that's 50% of your income. So knowing that 50% of your income is going to go to those three things, what do you think should be in your budget? So right now, I want you guys to think about it. Take 2-3 minutes and tell me 10 things that you think should be on your budget. And I'll give you a hint. Rent, maybe insurance for a car, gas. Go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute yourself and just shout it out. Gas, food, insurance, leisure or entertainment, yeah. Phone bill, definitely. Savings, yeah. Personal care. All right. So here are the main things, and utilities, internet, definitely. So here are the main items that there are in a budget. You got charitable gifts or tithing, savings, of course, rent and groceries, because everyone needs to eat. If you're going to college, it might look like room and board. Retirement. You got utilities, which is power, water, garbage, internet, cell phone, or if you're going to school, tuition. Transportation. If you have a car payment, you got to pay for gas, you got to pay for parking. And then, of course, there's insurance. You have to have auto insurance by law. Life insurance we talked about. Health insurance is something that you might want to have. I know a lot of people can stay on their parents' health insurance till they're 26, but once you're over 26, you might need to get your own. Entertainment, things like Spotify, Netflix, Amazon Prime, movie tickets. I love going to the movies. And then personal stuff, clothing, gifts, hobbies, getting your hair cut, things like that. And then, of course, debts. So if you get a credit card, you'll have to make a payment on that. Now, how do you know how much you should budget for these things?
Demry, can I add a couple items that maybe people don't think about?
Yeah.
Vet bills.
Vet bills, yes.
Pet care. I know a lot of you either own an animal or really want to get yourself a dog or something. And so plan for how much those guys cost, their ongoing food and medical care. Also, if you have any kind of ongoing medical issue, saving, even if you have health insurance, you can spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to treat diabetes or ADHD. Like, the gambit is huge on what you might need to be spending on medical. Even buying new glasses can be $400 or $500 or contacts. So just there's a lot of medical things in there.
Yes. Now, of these things, we have percentages. These are average percentages. Now, I'm going to show you the percentages here, and then I'm going to show you my personal budget that I used for June. And you can see mine don't quite match up with these, but they're close. So these are your recommended amounts. Now, here is, we have a program called Quicken. It's a software checkbook, and it allows you to put all your transactions in one place and categorize each transaction so you can figure out what you're spending where. So you can kind of keep track of your spending. You can know your balances up to date. You can put in automatic entries for payments. If you know your house bill is due on the 1st every month, you can have the checkbook automatically put that in there on the 1st. You can also try and stay on budget that way. And then apparently there's another program called Mint. This is just an example of Quicken. Now, as you can see here, I have about 35% on home. Now, this is a little higher than normal because we had our gutters cleaned and our roof cleaned this month. So that was $150. And we also had the Orkin guy come and spray pest spray, so those are things that are not every month things, but they're things that crop up. And that's the kind of things that you want to have a savings for. Food and dining, way over what our normal budget is. But we tried a new one of those home meal delivery things, which was an extra $150 some in our budget. So yeah, this is a little high. This is our auto. So this includes our car payments, our auto insurance, and any gas. So our Chevron bill. Here's our bills and utilities. As you can see, we have 12%, almost 13, which is right in the 10 to 15% range that we mentioned in the last slide. This is my tithing. It's not quite up to where it is, but my husband just started a new job, so we're getting there. This personal care, honestly, I can't remember what that is. Probably face masks and prescriptions. Financial, this is our life insurance. Health and fitness, this is gym membership and pharmacy, I think. And my husband's a gamer, so gaming, shopping, and entertainment is kind of all wrapped into one. This is usually a little bit higher, but with COVID, we're not going out as much. So, but that's kind of our breakdown of how we do things. So ours is not going to necessarily have the same amounts as other people. Also, thing to remember for bank fees. Now, some credit cards, if you have a credit card, some have annual fees. Some have, NSF fees if you overdraft your account. There's a lot of different things that you might not think about that you want to know, that are kind of not, unless it's a reoccurring fee, it's hard to budget for. So that's where your savings comes in, so that you can have that. Now this is your homework, and Elizabeth said she would send this slideshow out to everybody. I want you to do a sample budget. I'm going to have you assume you make $2,000 take home pay, and I want you to calculate what your percentage is for each of these items. And then send them in to Miss Elizabeth for grading. I don't know if that's something you do, Elizabeth, but that'll give you an idea of how to budget and about roughly how much that's going to make. And lastly, this is my take-home action items, things I want you guys to do. I want you to check out the classifieds, look at apartments, see how much they cost. It could be anywhere from $900 to $1,200 for a one-bedroom apartment. You don't know until you look. Ask your parents, how much do things really cost? How much do you guys spend on groceries a month? What's your power bill? Until you start talking to somebody that has these bills, you don't really know, what you're thinking about. Like for my dog, I spend about $30 a month on her dog food. Thankfully, it's not too much because I get it from Costco in a big, huge 55-pound bag. But, things like that are things that you want to think of. Ask them how much their auto gas bill is. Those are things that are good to know. And then grocery bills are going to vary. Some, college students might buy a bunch of Top Ramen. Top Ramen's really cheap. Not super good for you, but it's cheap. But then I know Elizabeth does buy lots and lots of good food. We splurge on fountain pops almost every day. They're only like $1.50 each. But, $1.50 times 30 days, you got to add that into your budget. I want you guys to go out and get a savings account. You can do that before you're 18. You just need your birth certificate. Just take your birth certificate, go to the bank, set up a savings account. And then go ahead and do that sample budget that is on the last slide. And then in the future, you want to start building your credit history. I suggest starting small. I personally started off with the Chevron gas card because I knew I was going to use gas every single month. And I was going to pay it off every single month because you had to have gas. So if I got a credit card for a gas company, then I would get the gas I knew I was going to pay for anyway, and I'd get that credit history built up. So think smart. So once you hit 18, go ahead and apply for something like a gas card, something that you're not going to have a super high limit on, but it's something that you will be able to use and pay off every month. Get an electronic checkbook, even if it's just a spreadsheet that keeps track of things. I think there's most likely free software out there if you look. I personally use Quicken. I find it awesome. My bank allows me to download my transactions. And I guess the Mint app that Elizabeth and Jordan use is free. So it's just a way to be smart about money. And then, of course, as soon as you get a job and can, start that variable universal life policy. And that's pretty much what I have for you guys. You guys have any questions for me on things that you might no?
Yeah, please feel free to unmute yourselves, guys, if you have any questions at all about finances or credit card miss. I'm sure a lot of you have started to get credit card offers in the mail, but we finished early, so I'll cut you loose early, but we're here and we're really happy to answer some questions, even if Tabitha or Philip have any questions. So anything you guys want to know? There's no stupid questions, I promise.
Okay.
Honestly, Demry, that was so great. A lot of great information and really clear and concise. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Hopefully the examples made you think a little.
Yeah.
I definitely wanted to show you the smart way of doing both the life insurance and the retirement, just to kind of show you, and the credit card, just showing you what that small little difference for each scenario, what that difference makes.
And the investing early too. I really liked that, how you put that one in there, because like the one that you think it's going to be, it's really not that one, and it really puts it into perspective.
Yeah. And remember that's an example of a 12% annual interest return. And like right now, the stock market's in the toilet, so it's not going to be around 12%. So that is just an example of a 12% to make it.
So Demry, say, Karina is fast forward a few years and the stock market has improved and she's 19 and she's got a job while she's in school. And she wants to invest a little bit of that money that she's making tips as a barista. How does she do that?
Well, I would definitely recommend talking to a financial planner because you can sit down with them and they will ask you things that you wouldn't even think to remember. Like, okay, what are your goals? How much money do you want when you retire? If you're going to have kids, how do you want to invest in their college? If you want to buy a house, when do you want to buy a house? How much money do you want to put down? If you're going to buy a car, how much money do you want to put down? What do you want your car payment to be? I mean, they're thinking about your whole life and try and map out what the best thing to do for you is for what you want to accomplish. And having that plan to start out your life with is great because I guess my husband said it this way. He said, if you're aiming at nothing, you'll hit it every time. But if you have a goal, you might not hit it every time, but at least you know where you're going. And as long as you have somewhere that you know to go, it's definitely worth it. Because I wish I would have started saving for my kids' college when they were babies. But that was just something that didn't cross my mind. And if I had sat down with somebody who said, hey, you should do this, that would have made a big difference in my kids' life. I can tell you that. So yeah. And then for the homework being due, I guess by next week, is that when I'm doing the other?
We can do you next week, or we could do Shannon and give you kind of a break, whatever you want to do. Do you want to wham bam?
Whichever is fine with me. I would say get it to Elizabeth by next week, next Wednesday. Do you guys meet every day, or do you just meet once a week?
Well, I see everybody every day, honestly, because I go to all their classes. We have the class I teach is twice a week. So I am changing this. Done. Okay. Give me one more second, guys. Thank you for being patient. Share. Copy link. Okay. In the chat, I am putting the link to the PowerPoint. So that's the PowerPoint. You can go in, make a copy of it as a Google slide, and then just go to that last slide and fill it out. And then I think you can just email that to me, right? Like share it back to me. How's that work? Tabitha, do you know?
Oh, you can probably just print it out and then handwrite on it, scan it and send it back, or take a picture of it and send it to you.
Not everyone has printers, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that if you did like a Google slide, I think you could like copy and paste it into another document and then share it with Elizabeth, or save it and email it.
Yeah, you can go to File and make a copy as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Reva taught me that one because I didn't know how to do that. So I'm sure you guys can get that to me, but it's a good exercise to go over. And you can even work on it right now if you wanted to. All right, do we have any other questions for Demry or anything else you want to go over?
And just a quick reminder of the different types of credit. Like I said, a Chevron card is considered a store card. So, you know, you could get a Macy's card, or, you know, a lot of stores have their own specific store. You know, I'm sure you can get a Kohl's card or a Target card, or
that is
a store card, which is different than like a Visa. A Visa can be used at anywhere. So that's a totally different type of credit versus an auto loan, which is another type of credit. So just remember, there is different types of credit when you're building your credit history. Oh, and to answer your question, where would you find or meet a financial advisor? My husband works for Prudential, who does financial advising. I think Edward Jones is a financial advisor. You can probably just do a Google search for financial advisors. You want to make sure that they have their securities license, because like my husband went through 120 hours worth of study to be able to become a financial advisor. They need to know all the laws to make sure that you're not breaking any when you're investing your money.
And I am working on getting a financial advisor actually to do a workshop with us. So Demry is going to come back and teach us about payroll and filling out your paperwork and stuff. When you have a job and sign up for health insurance, you should see her spreadsheets when it comes to health insurance. It's a thing of beauty. I have another friend of mine who's going to come on and talk to you about owning your own business. She has her own business. It's a one-woman shop. She makes her own hours. She's her own boss. And she can talk to you all about how you set that up and what the pros and the cons are of that. And then I'm working, the third person I'm trying to get come in is an actual financial advisor. Is that something you guys are all interested in? Are all those topics good for you guys? Helpful? Okay, cool. Awesome.
Right.
Thank you, Demry, so much. I really appreciate you.
No problem. Sorry, I thought I'd made it to an hour, but apparently I was a little bit short.
That's
so,
fine.
Guys, you can get off a little earlier. All right. Well, I will see you guys later.
All right.
Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you all for the workshop tonight at 7:30.
Have a good night.